Welcome to the Sad Crime Channel. Today's story took place in the United Kingdom in Road Heath in 2022. Road Heath is a small village in the civil parish of Odd Road near Alsager, within the unitary authority of Cheshire East and ceremonial county of Cheshire in England. Alice Wood and Ryan Watson grew up in Cheadle. Although their paths likely crossed there multiple times, they only met in 2020 when Ryan was 22 years old and Alice was 21. Something sparked between them, and they quickly became a couple, getting engaged just 6 months later. In October 2021, with the help of their parents, they bought a house and moved in together with their 4 dogs in Road Heath, a village near their hometown. Although Alice's parents had separated, she maintained close relationships with both of them. She had even lived with them alternately before. Her mother, Deborah, worked in registration at a medical clinic, and her father, Trevor, was a carpenter. Alice also had 2 brothers. Alice had always been quiet and shy, but excelled academically in school. She was selected for a group of particularly gifted students in secondary school. She nearly got into Oxford and was at the final stage of recruitment, but ended up at the University of Manchester studying philosophy, ethics, and theology, graduating in 2022. In 2022, Alice planned to continue her education and received a scholarship for postgraduate studies at the University of Cambridge. Learning came easily to her, and she even had a tattoo with her exam results. Those close to her remember Alice as ambitious, sharp, and always setting high standards for herself. She enjoyed traveling and going to quiz nights with her mom. Before starting her studies, she worked as a shop assistant and waitress. On the other hand, her boyfriend Ryan was her complete opposite in terms of approach to people and life. He was extremely sociable, outgoing, and confident, enjoying sports and physical activities like football, BMX, biking, and swimming. He had a younger brother, Owen, and worked at a charity called Headway, which aimed to help people who had suffered brain injuries and support their families, as well as raise awareness about brain injuries. Ryan was passionate about helping others and excelled in his role, being highly engaged in the organization's activities. He had a knack for understanding clients' needs and was well liked by his colleagues and others. Ryan often hung out with his friends, listening to music, going out in town, or partying. On Friday, May 6, 2022, Alice and Ryan went to the 60th birthday party of one of the charity's clients, which took place in a bar in the nearby town of Stoke-on-Trent. After arriving, they first gave the birthday person their gift, and then sat at a table with other guests. Initially, the atmosphere was great. They were drinking, laughing, and chatting, seemingly having a good time. Ryan was typically the life of the party, engaging everyone at the table, talking to many people, and dancing. However, Alice kept to herself and grew increasingly annoyed as the evening went on. At one point, Ryan engaged in a lively discussion with a woman named Tiffany, whom he had met before at various events, and whose mother was also a client of the charity. Tiffany was also present at the birthday party, and Ryan and Tiffany seemed deeply engrossed in conversation, realizing they had much in common. Alice sat beside them, visibly irritated, not participating in their exchange but clearly displeased. Throughout the evening, she threw jealous glances at Tiffany, observing her. Other guests also noticed the growing tension between Alice and Ryan. Finally, Alice told her boyfriend to watch what he was drinking, likely because Ryan had driven them to the party in his car, a white Fiat Punto, and they had both consumed several drinks, posing a problem. At 11 p.m., they decided it was time to head home. Ryan had only recently passed his driving test, and with the alcohol consumed, he didn't feel capable of driving. Alice decided to drive less than 15 kilometers back home. Although they arrived safely without any issues, a huge argument erupted between them on the way. When they got home, Alice parked the Fiat right behind her own car, a black Ford Fiesta. Around 11:30 p.m., neighbors heard some shouting, door slamming, and the roar of an engine. Later, Ryan yelled, "Oh God, not again!" Then he rushed to a nearby car and frustratedly kicked it. Meanwhile, Alice got into her car and began to reverse. However, she didn't have enough space, so she slowly moved forward and backward to be able to exit. Finally, she got back into Ryan's car and, using the handbrake, pushed it backward. Ryan stood nearby, looking around. After a moment, something caught his attention. He glanced at his phone's screen. Someone had sent him a message. Ryan decided to reply, started to walk away, which must have greatly irritated Alice. She then pressed the gas pedal hard and hit the car behind her. Then she hit a lamppost and a rubbish bin. Ryan was nearby, and suddenly the reversing car almost hit him. Then Alice once again started to perform strange maneuvers, lightly forward, lightly backward, seemingly aiming for her boyfriend. Ryan ran around the vehicle trying to avoid a collision. Later, Alice drove away. Ryan began to head home, unaware that his girlfriend would soon be within sight again. With full force, she turned towards him. The impact caused him to fall onto the front of the Ford, hitting his head on the windshield, then sliding onto the sidewalk. Luckily, he wasn't hurt, landing steadily on his feet, oddly still holding his phone. Alice reversed slightly and then drove toward him again. This time, Ryan had no time or chance to react, and he fell. Alice managed to hit him. The force of the impact caused Ryan to be pulled under the car and trapped beneath it. Before Alice stopped, she drove about 160 meters more. For 21 seconds, Ryan was trapped under her car and was dragged along the road. When Alice got out of the car, she finally realized what she had done. She saw her boyfriend's body under her car. She tried to pull him out from there, but quickly realized she couldn't do it alone. Then she rushed to the nearest house and knocked on the door, begging for help at the same time. When Teresa Colborn, who lived there, opened the door, she saw a frightened young woman. She was shouting, "Please, call an ambulance! I think I ran over my boyfriend!" Alice was panicking, but she wasn't crying. She immediately started to explain. She said that she and Ryan had argued earlier that night. She got upset because she was convinced she had left her phone at the bar where they were at the party. She wanted to go back for it, but he wouldn't let her. She added that on the way back, he reproached her for flirting with other men. That's why this whole situation erupted. Alice also asked Teresa if she could use her phone to call her mother, but in the end, she couldn't remember her mother's phone number. In the meantime, the neighbor was talking to the emergency operator. Right after, along with Alice, they rushed outside. Teresa recalls expecting to see Ryan sitting on the side of the road, writhing in pain. Instead, she saw him under the car. Only his legs were sticking out. He wasn't moving. There was blood on the street. Not far from the car, there were drag marks. Alice then said, "Look what I've done." After a while, rescuers arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, Ryan was already dead. Alice decided to stay at the neighbor's apartment. She didn't want to go outside. She didn't want to see her boyfriend. She also couldn't sit still. She was in total shock. The neighbors tried to comfort her, sit her down, or lay her down. They didn't know if her agitation was due to her being under the influence of alcohol or because of what had happened. When the police arrived at the scene, Alice was already in her apartment. When the officer assigned to the case entered her home, she was sitting on the couch, crying. He immediately smelled alcohol on her. According to him, Alice was simply drunk. A breathalyzer test was immediately performed, and then she was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol and suspicion of killing Ryan Watson. In the police car, the officer explained to her what steps would be taken next. Alice replied, "Fine, I deserve it." She cried all the way to the police station. The officers tried to calm her down, but she kept repeating that she didn't deserve their help or their kindness. Several times she also suggested that they should shoot her. During the initial interrogation, Alice responded to each question with no comment. When the detectives reviewed all the footage from the cameras, both from the party and from the street surveillance, on May 26th, Alice was officially charged with the murder of her boyfriend, Ryan Watson. Interestingly, Alice did not plead guilty. She maintained that what happened was simply an unfortunate accident. The autopsy revealed that Ryan's cause of death was asphyxiation. Everything indicated that the victim suffocated under the weight of the car pressing on his chest. Other injuries to Ryan included brain swelling, as well as fractures, cuts, and bruises on his face and torso that occurred as his body was dragged along the road. According to the coroner, death occurred very quickly. Alice claimed to have had 2 glasses of wine, 2 rum cocktails, and a glass of champagne. The breathalyzer test showed that she had 61 micrograms of alcohol per 100 milliliters of exhaled air. The legal limit in the UK is 35 micrograms of alcohol per 100 milliliters of exhaled air, so she definitely should not have been behind the wheel that day. During the trial, the defendant spoke up and presented her version of events, practically crying the entire time. She maintained that Ryan was upset with her because he believed she was flirting with other men at the party, thus humiliating him in front of his friends. She claimed that he called her insulting names at the time. She also explained that when they both returned home, she wanted to call her father and ask him to pick her up. However, she couldn't find her phone. It's worth mentioning that the defendant's phone was later secured by the police in Ryan's car. So it wasn't left at the bar. Alice stated that she wanted to stay overnight at her mother's to calm her emotions and give herself and Ryan a chance to cool off. However, he refused to lend her his phone so she could call her father, despite her repeated requests. At one point, unexpectedly, Ryan became so angry that he approached her, grabbed her by the hair, and pressed her head against the gas stove burner. With his hand on the switch, he said, "Ask about it one more damn time." According to Alice's testimony, she then ran out of the house and got into her car. Ryan followed her. Wanting to end the argument, Alice told him to go back inside and go to bed, and she would go to her mother's and come back in the morning. He replied, "Your mother is already dead." The defendant tried to convince everyone that at that moment Ryan threatened to send someone to her mother's house to kill her. That's when Alice got very nervous and pressed the gas pedal hard. The car hit the Fiat Punto, then the pole, and the rubbish bin. She planned to stop just in front of Ryan to scare him a little, as she put it, and she just wanted to get back at him. Then the situation spiraled out of control. When a moment later Ryan hit his head on the windscreen, Alice was shocked. She was going to reverse and drive away. It wasn't until she drove a few meters that she realized something strange was happening to her car. She couldn't accelerate, and maneuvering was also difficult. So she stopped. As she stated in court, that's when her nightmare began. What she saw seemed almost unreal to her. She saw her boyfriend lying under her car. She argued that she hadn't noticed him before, had no idea she had run him over, that he was stuck underneath. She emphasized that she didn't intend to kill or harm him. On the other hand, the prosecutor argued that Alice was guilty because she intentionally drove into her partner, that it wasn't an accident, as she claimed. He argued that during the argument, she simply lost control and used the car as a weapon, as a tool of crime. The prosecutor was convinced that the defendant was trying to shift the blame in court, suggesting that it was Ryan who accused her of flirting with others, when in reality it was exactly the opposite. She was angry that her partner and the woman at the party, Tiffany, were getting along so well, they forgot about the whole world. The prosecutor believed that the defendant was simply jealous, and jealousy ultimately pushed her to commit the crime. Alcohol didn't help here either. During the trial, neighbors of Alice and Ryan testified, those who heard the arguments between the two. One woman was awakened by some strange sounds. The sound of metal scraping, probably when Alice hit the pole in the rubbish bin. When the witness looked out the window, she saw a man. He was arguing with someone sitting in the car. Then the car started moving back and forth towards the man. The neighbor felt as if the driver wanted to scare him. A few minutes later, employees of the Chinese restaurant nearby heard horrible screams. Also, on the surveillance footage, you can hear Ryan trapped under the car screaming loudly. Therefore, it was hard for the prosecutor to believe that the defendant didn't know she had run over her boyfriend and dragged him along the road. He argued that she must have heard his cries for help, since even people not directly at the scene heard them. Tiffany Faraday also testified as a witness, the woman Ryan was talking to at the party that evening. She felt that they did indeed establish a connection between them at the time. They found a common language. She also felt that Alice was jealous because of it. After 11 p.m., when Tiffany was already home, someone tried to contact her on Instagram. Unknown man called her 3 times from his account, but she couldn't answer at the time. Later she tried to call back, but this time the mysterious stranger didn't pick up. So she sent a message asking, "Who are you?" Later, it turned out that it was Ryan trying to reach her at that time. It's unknown exactly when he made the call, during the argument with Alice or when he was in danger. We also don't know his purpose for calling. However, one thing is certain. That night, he tried to get in touch with Tiffany. During the trial, experts in road accident matters also testified. However, they didn't agree on the timing and Alice's reaction. One claimed that Alice might not have had enough time to take any action when she momentarily lost sight of Ryan. Another argued that since the suspect had previously tried to run him over, she was already acting with a specific intent. Alice's defender emphasized that the couple had a harmonious and successful relationship before the accident. They were in love, bought a house, were engaged, and planned to start a family. One of the neighbors admitted that Alice and Ryan seemed very happy and made an almost perfect couple. She couldn't believe it when she heard what had happened and how the story ended so tragically. Ryan is dead, and Alice faces a potential life sentence. Another neighbor was also incredibly surprised by the turn of events. He claimed that both the accused and her boyfriend were very nice, friendly people. They never caused any trouble, were calm, and didn't even have loud parties. They seemed to be in love and looked like a well-matched couple. Alice's lawyer maintained that his client had no intention of killing her partner, and her remorse and behavior at the scene were genuine. He added that she lost someone she loved, and now she would have to live with the knowledge that she was responsible for it. Alice admitted that she caused Ryan's death. However, she insisted that it was not intentional, that it was an accident. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Alice was always modestly but elegantly dressed. The only change in her appearance was her hairstyle. Alice cut part of her hair short but left long strands at the back. This immediately caught the attention of journalists, who described her new hairstyle as peculiar. The accused often appeared in court with a book or academic textbook. On January 2, 2024, the lawyers made their decision. Alice Wood was found guilty. When the verdict was read, she showed no emotions. As she left the courtroom, she just lowered her head. A month later, a sentencing hearing took place. The judge stated that he did not believe the defendant's explanations, especially her claim that she simply tried to back out and drive away at the end. According to him, the recording that concluded the evidence in this case shows that the woman drove straight into Ryan. She didn't reverse at all. She turned onto the street, aiming directly at the place where Ryan was. In the judge's opinion, Alice acted with the intent to deprive her partner of life. It was highly likely not a long-planned act, but rather an impulsive response driven by emotions. The judge also didn't believe the explanation that she didn't know Ryan was stuck under her car. In his opinion, the recordings show the car unnaturally rising and falling, and Alice's words that she was sure it was caused by potholes in the road are completely unbelievable. In his view, the woman showed no real remorse and didn't take full responsibility for what happened. Another aggravating circumstance was also the fact that she got behind the wheel under the influence of alcohol. However, in her favor, it was noted that she had no prior convictions and no history of traffic offenses. Also, her age and the fact that she didn't try to flee the scene were mitigating circumstances. Moreover, from court documents we learned that Alice had problems with alcohol, diagnosed depression, and anxiety. In the end, the judge added that prison might be a tough experience for her, but she has only herself to blame. Alice Wood was sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of applying for parole no earlier than after 18 years. As she was led out of the building, tears were streaming down her face. Not long ago, she was a young woman with prospects and plans for the future. Now she faces many years behind bars.
About 10 minutes ago, there was a young lady in our house. She walked outside now with us, and she said to my wife and myself that she's the driver.
Okay.
They had an argument, and she drove over him.
Okay, so Alice, based on the circumstance that we found out already, okay, I'm going to arrest you on... No, listen to me, okay, I'm going to... Listen to me, I'm going to arrest you on suspicion of murder, okay, so you don't have to say anything, but behind your defence you don't mention now something which later on in court. Anything you do say, maybe we can have it.
Can't imagine how Ryan was scared at that time. The one person Ryan trusts the most was the person who took his life in such a violent way. I am living in a nightmare knowing that my son's moments, his last moments, were so brutal.